Ann Allums, Certified Professional Dog Trainer. This video is your orientation for the training class. I want to give you some tips to prepare for class as well as have some understanding about how your dog learns and how the training works that we're going to be doing in class. The dog will do whatever we reinforce, and I'll talk about that a lot more in this video. I'll also show you some tools in this video that you can use and some fun stuff that'll help with your training. And my assistants will be Sarge and Sylvie. They've been my demo dogs for over 10 years. They just stepped outside to the yard for a few minutes. Oh, there they are. Coming! Animals have three main types of needs. The first are physical needs, such as health care, good nutrition, daily exercise, play, a quiet and comfortable resting place, and safety. Also, emotions are included here because there is a physiological part to emotions. Next are social needs. Dogs are social beings who crave companionship. They naturally live in groups, since a lone dog cannot usually survive. They need social interaction to be healthy. The third category is mental, which includes training and behavior modification and other mental stimulations such as scavenging and sniffing. Most behavior problems are a result of one or more of these needs not being met appropriately. For example, if a dog is emotionally distressed or anxious, he won't be able to focus on training. So training is compromised if the physical or social needs aren't met. I start with this because sometimes it's easy to get caught up in what you want from the dog without stopping to evaluate if you're meeting the dog's needs. I know, Sarge, you enjoy training. Sarge loves being a demo dog. Hang in there, I have a little information to share first. There are three components related to the training process. These components are interrelated in that each one has an effect on the others. I'll share examples of each one of them now. And I'll wake you up, Sarge, when we're done. What is management? No, this doesn't mean you need an MBA to have a dog. This means arranging the environment to the extent possible to set your dog up for success, to help him get it right and not practice inappropriate behavior. Why is that important? Because every time your dog does a behavior, it is being reinforced, made stronger, simply by the process of repetition. Every time he barks out the window at the mailman, that behavior becomes more ingrained in his brain and body. So management may mean closing the curtains to block the dog's view of the barking triggers. It may mean keeping countertops clear of food to remove the temptation and rewards of being a counter surfer. It can mean putting up any valuables that you don't want to risk having your dog explore with their mouths or chew on when he's lonely because you aren't there and this smells like you. This front clip harness is a way to manage the leash pulling. Management also means keeping my dog on a leash if I don't know if he'll come or not when I call. So the use of management can minimize the pet owner's frustration and set the dog up to succeed. Relationship is a huge component of the training process. When you have a trusting relationship, you have your dog's respect, and he'll want to spend time with you and work with you. That's one reason why we focus on positive reinforcement, because aversive methods damage any sort of trusting relationship. A good relationship is based on trust and having enjoyable experiences together. This means playing together, rewarding your dog, meeting your dog's needs, and listening to your dog. Here's a short example of how I'm listening to Sarge to see if he wants me to keep petting him. I'm not saying all dogs move their leg like this to indicate that they want a belly rub, but dogs do communicate with us. I strongly suggest learning more about canine body language. Here's just one resource you can check out. One important point I'll mention here is a word on growling. A growl is communication, and it means your dog is uncomfortable. Never punish a growl. Just stop what you're doing and reevaluate or call a professional trainer. Don't fight with your dog, as you will create much more serious behavior issues. Respect your dog's need to communicate and be heard. Finally, in the best relationships, a partner is looking for things to appreciate and to say thank you for, rather than focusing on everything the other person is doing wrong and criticizing that. This applies to our relationship with our dogs. As you'll see in How Dogs Learn in this video, when you start focusing on what your dog is doing right and rewarding it, instead of reacting when he's doing something you don't like, you're going to get more of the behavior you like. You become a treasure hunter, not a dirt digger. Moving on, what is training? Think of training as teaching. When we teach, we want to have a willing student who is actively involved in the training process. Good teachers make training enjoyable for the learner and bring the learner's abilities, choices, and mind to the training process. Training includes both formal and informal interactions because dogs are always learning. And now I want to talk about how dogs learn, since this will help us when we get to training class, as well as anytime you want to teach your dog something. Basically, there are two ways that dogs learn. First is learning by association. I'll briefly demonstrate learning by association with Sarge. Having me look at his teeth is not something he naturally enjoys, but if I consistently follow it with a treat, the teeth looking becomes a good thing. You can see him in this video choosing to stay around rather than walk off. You can see him almost say, "Where's the treat?" This is a very powerful method of learning. Just one more time. Where's the treat? And let's look at Sylvie's teeth. Where's the treat? Notice that she doesn't have to earn the treat. She just gets it after I look at her teeth. This was easy, as it should be. Be aware that this learning can work with negative things too, so that if something happens afterwards that the dog doesn't like, he learns to have a negative association. For example, on a leash walk, if the dog gets a sharp tug on the leash every time he is near another dog, he may learn to associate seeing other dogs with getting an unpleasant tug or reprimand. The second way dogs learn is by consequence. In this type of learning, the dog does something first, and if the consequence is good, the dog is likely to repeat that behavior. If the consequence was not so good from the dog's perspective, they are less likely to try that again. Here I ask for a spin, which Sylvie has already learned to do, and then I treat her for doing it. So why did Sylvie spin? Was it because I asked her to? Actually, it was because there was a history of reinforcement for spinning when I asked her to. She had learned that there were good consequences to doing that behavior when I asked. Does that mean I always have to carry around treats? No, reinforcers are anything the dog likes. Touch, attention, happy talk, game of tug, chase, belly rubs, going outside, coming inside. We can also vary the frequency of how often we reward once the behavior is strong. But because of this law of learning, over the long run, we want to try to make it worth the dog's while to do what we ask. You want to have more deposits into the reinforcement bank than not. This is not bribing. Bribery is when you show the dog the reward before the dog performs the behavior. We're just rewarding a choice that we like. Speaking of which, we can even teach by rewarding whenever the dog does something we like. This is called capturing behavior, and sometimes we trainers call it armchair training because you can just sit and watch your dog and reward what you like. Training without luring or cajoling your dog is very effective. One of my favorite examples is that Sarge would bow every morning to stretch. I knew if I rewarded the bow, I could teach him to do it more often. So I put my clicker on the nightstand, and every morning when he bowed, I clicked and gave him a treat. He soon learned to offer the bow more often throughout the day because it was paying off. Once I could reliably predict when he would bow, I put it on cue so that he then only got the reward if I cued the behavior. My cue was, ta-da! If you're still asking, what the heck's a clicker? I'll mention it again later in this video. As another training side note, what if I had said, "Ta-da!" to Sarge when I first started training the bow? He may have given me this look. Cute, but he has no clue as what I wanted to do. I could have tried to lure him or put pressure on his shoulders, but that can be distracting and wouldn't have taught him what I wanted. A common training error is using a verbal cue too soon. Let's take sit, for example. Saying sit is not the first step to teaching this. It's what we add after the behavior is already reliable, so that we are associating the finished behavior with the cue. Repeating the cue, sit, 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 doesn't help either to teach your dog what to do. And if I try to get the sit by pushing the dog's rear down, it teaches the dog that sit means my person is about to push my rear down. So, just remember, we're going to wait to add the verbal cue. Add the verbal cue after the behavior is already reliable. In this short clip, attaching the leash is the reward because Sarge associates it with going on a walk. Rather than making him be still to attach the leash, I just stood still and waited until he could control himself for the leash. Here's a training tip. If you expect attention, give attention. And don't train for longer than you can pay attention to the dog. You don't want to disconnect from your dog during a training session, or your dog may disconnect from you, or you may miss rewardable moments or confuse your dog. Remember, your dog has a lot of choices competing for his attention. Try to make it fun and rewarding for your pet to do what you ask. So, what if your dog is doing something you don't like? We can't say he's wrong or bad because dogs don't have a moral understanding of right or wrong. We've learned that dogs repeat what is reinforced and that consequence drives behavior. So first remind yourself that the dog isn't being spiteful or dominant. Consider the laws of learning. Perhaps your dog doesn't have a reinforcement history for what you want him to do. Perhaps you can manage the environment to prevent the behavior and set him up for success. Are the dog's physical, social, and mental needs being met reasonably well? Can your dog trust you as a leader with good resources that you share freely and a history of good experiences together? Or do you have emotional outbursts uncharacteristic of a benevolent leader? Do you have realistic expectations? It takes hundreds or more repetitions with reinforcement to truly learn a behavior. To sum it up, dogs perform behaviors that have been reinforced. To change behavior, we need to reinforce the desired behavior and remove reinforcers for the undesirable behavior. Thank you for taking time to watch this orientation. I think it's awesome that you're interested in training for your dog, and I'm happy to help you. Let's start catching our dogs in the act of getting it right. See you in class.